Welcome to Mischief Wargaming. I'm John, and this is Star Trek Attack Wing. Produced by WizKids and based on the 55-year-old sci-fi juggernaut that is Star Trek, Attack Wing uses the familiar flight path system found in Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars X-Wing. Attack Wing is a space combat game pitting the iconic capital ships from Star Trek against each other. Each ship can be customised with captains, talents, crew, tech, and weapon upgrades. In this video we're looking at just the contents of the start set, which pits a Klingon bird of prey and a Vor'cha class battlecruiser against Starfleet's Nebula class and the iconic Galaxy class ships. The Klingon forces feature the IKS Vorn, a Cavort class bird of prey. The Vorn is captained by Duras, son of Jarod, head of the House of Duras. His ship is equipped with disruptor cannons, reinforced bulkheads, and has a notable Klingon helmsman. The other ship is a generic Vor'cha class battlecruiser, which I've named the IKS Ta'nat. This ship is captained by the Duras Sisters, Lursa and B'etor. They are less skilled than their brother, but being able to switch between each sister makes them a lot more dangerous when their ship is cloaked. Their ship also has the torpedo fusillade upgrade. Both Klingon ships will be making use of their cloak to survive, as they have weaker shields than their Federation opponents. Speaking of which, the first Starfleet ship is the legendary USS Enterprise. Captained, of course, by Jean-Luc Picard, this is potentially the most dangerous ship in this video. The Enterprise is equipped with a tactical station, photon torpedoes, and has Geordi LaForge on board. The other ship is a generic Nebula class ship, which I've named the USS Sharman. Captained by William T. Riker and equipped with photon torpedoes, the Nebula isn't as potent as the Enterprise, but then what ship in Starfleet is? Starfleet ships have the advantage in durability over the Klingons, having more shields, but they are less manoeuvrable. This video is keeping things super simple. There's no obstacles or terrain to worry about, and the mission is whichever side has ships remaining wins. The House of Duras has put Picard and Riker in a situation where the only outcomes are survival or death. For deployment, the Klingons are starting close together, while Starfleet has spread out a bit more. Off screen I rolled for initiative, which the Klingons won. And with that, turn 1 begins. The way in which the game works is that ships decide their manoeuvre at the beginning of the turn and lock them in with dials. They then move depending on their captain's skill, starting with the lowest, which in this battle is the Duras Sisters, who start off with Lursa in command. Lursa's Vor'cha reveals a speed-free right bank, and for her action, predictably, the ship cloaks. This makes the ship much harder to hit, at the cost of the ship's shields. Also, as the Klingons have initiative, they move last in the case of a tie in captain's skill. So Riker moves next in the Sharman. The Nebula class reveals a 4-speed forward, moving as fast as possible. The ship then calls battle stations, but that likely won't be needed this turn. This leads to Duras revealing a 3-speed left bank for his bird of prey, splitting away from his sisters. Duras also cloaks. This leaves Picard making use of the Enterprise's straight line speed and moving a 5-speed forward. Since no ships are in range to fire, we move on to turn 2. Lursa makes another bank, which puts her at a good range to acquire a target lock on the USS Sharman. Riker responds with a slower bank of his own, but it isn't enough to avoid the Ta'nat's firing arc. so Riker's action is to perform an evasive manoeuvre, giving him a better chance of surviving a close range hit. Duras then moves forward, but being cloaked makes him a tricky target. The IKS Vorn uses a sensor echo to move laterally. The ship isn't quite where the Enterprise's sensors thought it was. But Picard was expecting a fight, so slows the Galaxy class to a crawl and goes on red alert, battle stations. Shooting in this game works in the opposite of moving. Shooting is done in reverse order, starting with the highest captain skill. So we start with the USS Enterprise firing at the IKS Vorn. At this range, neither side gains any advantage, so the Enterprise fires its phaser banks at the cloaked bird of prey. The shots all seemingly hit their target, but again cloaked ships are tricky foes, and the Cavort rolls an extra 4 dice to evade the attack. This is almost enough to completely negate the attack, but the Enterprise isn't Starfleet's flagship for nothing, and still manages to damage the Klingon ship. As the Klingons have initiative, they shoot first in the case of a tie, so Duras opens fire on the Enterprise in retaliation. The IKS Vorn has a passive ability where it gains an extra attack die when cloaked, but the Enterprise has its own passive ability which removes an attack die when defending. Capital ships aren't usually as evasive as the Vorn was. Normally they'd only be rolling 1 die when evading. This means the Enterprise only takes 1 hit, bringing its shield integrity down to 75%. In addition, by firing, the Klingon ship now has to decloak. After Riker's bank, the USS Sharman is not able to fire on the Vor'cha, but it is able to take a long-range shot at the bird of prey. Unfortunately, the cloak is still effective until the end of the turn, and the IKS Vorn avoids any damage. However, Lursa is in a position to inflict some real hurt. Lursa's captain ability adds an extra die on the attack while cloaked, rolling 6 dice in total. The roll isn't great, however, so the Ta'nat spends its target lock to reroll anything that wasn't a hit. Unfortunately for Riker, even with the evasive manoeuvres, the Nebula class takes an absolute pounding. The shields are gone entirely and the hull integrity is now down to 50%. Not only that, one of the damage points was also a critical. Riker himself is injured, meaning that he cannot use his ability for the rest of the game. The Vor'cha also has to decloak, but the damage is done and the Nebula is limping. Turn 3 and the IKS Ta'nat turns towards the Enterprise, cloaking again. Riker turns in the same direction, taking the opportunity to acquire a target lock on Lursa's ship, whilst it is still at least partially visible. Duras, however, goes all ahead full, also cloaking. Finally, the Enterprise banks slowly towards the approaching Vor'cha class, also acquiring a target lock. The Enterprise then fires their photon torpedoes, discarding their tactical station upgrade to boost the attack power by an extra 2 dice. Even with the cloak providing protection, the torpedoes find their mark, and the Ta'nat takes 2 critical hits. The first is power disruption, sending the ship into auxiliary power, meaning they have to take it easy next turn or risk losing control. The second is a direct hit, which scores an extra point of damage. The IKS Ta'nat is now down to 40% hull integrity. The IKS Vorn then opens fire with their rear-facing disruptor cannons at the Enterprise. In addition, the Vorn's passive means that the shot adds an extra 2 dice. The close range of the shot negates the Enterprise's passive ability. However, luck is not on Duras' side, as it only scores 2 hits, one of which is cancelled by the Galaxy class evading the shot. The shield integrity of the Enterprise is still at 50%. Riker swoops in to defend his captain by firing at the bird of prey. However, despite scoring 2 critical hits, the Nebula just isn't able to work around the Vorn's cloak. Finally, Lursa fires at Picard. But those targeted systems must be hit hard by running on auxiliary power, as the Enterprise is completely undamaged. Turn 4 begins with Lursa managing to control their power issues by slowing to a crawl. Lursa isn't stupid, however, she's expecting some incoming fire, so instead of cloaking and sacrificing her shields, she begins evasive manoeuvres. Riker, though, misjudges the distance between the Sharman and the Vorn. And gets dangerously close, which also now means Riker skips his action for the turn. Then it's my turn to make a mistake. As the IKS Vorn performs a come about move, turning 180 degrees, it should then go on to auxiliary power, and certainly not acquire a target lock on the Nebula. Don't worry, I noticed the mistake before the next turn begins, and the target lock doesn't actually get used this turn, so it doesn't really make a difference. Lastly, Picard reveals a free speed left turn, but that would leave the Enterprise in a bit of a bad spot. So Picard gets Geordi LaForge to pull some engineering trickery and uses his ability to instead perform a 1-speed left turn. It's still enough to put the ship under auxiliary power, however, the knife fight begins as the Enterprise opens fire on the Vor'cha. The stress of the manoeuvre, though, has compromised the targeting as the Ta'nat is able to completely evade the attack. Duras then fires upon the USS Sharman. Two critical hits is enough to finish the ship off, especially with one of them being a direct hit. Riker calls for his crew to abandon ship. The USS Sharman is no more. Lastly, Lursa fires at Picard, but even at this range, her ship is only able to bring the Enterprise's shield to quarter strength. Things aren't looking good for the USS Enterprise as we enter turn 5. Lursa performs a come about move, going on auxiliary power again to do so. Duras manages the auxiliary power from the previous turn. And then acquires a target lock on the Enterprise. Picard, however, has his own power woes to worry about, and the Enterprise makes a slow left bank, leaving the ship unable to fire either Klingon ship. The Klingons, however, have no such worry. The IKS Vorn opens fire on the Enterprise, doing enough to finally knock out the Galaxy-class's shields. The IKS then takes their turn, just about able to do some damage. The Enterprise is now at 80% hull integrity. Turn 6 and things are really not looking good for Captain Jean-Luc Picard. The IKS Ta'nat takes things slow while keeping the Enterprise in sight. Duras makes a faster turn, both Klingons going on battle stations. The Enterprise tried to skirt around the Vorn's firing arc, but it isn't quite fast enough, and the ship performs evasive manoeuvres. But will it be enough as Duras opens fire? If the bird of prey hadn't gone on battle stations, then yes, it would have been enough. But with Duras spending the token, the attack now scores 4 hits, bringing the Enterprise's hull down to only 40% integrity. And then to end the turn, Lursa orders her Vor'cha to fire at the damaged Starfleet flagship. The shot is enough, and much glory is earned by the House of Duras this day as they defeat the USS Enterprise and repel the Federation. The Klingons win. So that was Star Trek Attack Wing. This game is very similar to first edition Star Wars X-Wing, but with much less of a focus on evasion and more on shields and upgrades. The two sides played very differently, with the Federation having more shields and higher skilled captains, but then lacking in agility, while the Klingons have some nasty weapons, but importantly they have cloaks, which proved to be a real thorn in the side for the Federation. Also, confession time again. I completely forgot that I could swap between Lursa and B'etor at the start of each round. I mean, they won, so it doesn't really matter. Their ship also wasn't destroyed, so the extra dice from B'etor on defence wouldn't have really impacted anything. But importantly, I know for future games. I've got more Attack Wing on the way, more Federation and more Klingons. But after that, I'm really hoping to expand and include fleets of my favourite factions, the Romulans and the Cardassians. I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you again. Last video, it was for hitting 100 subscribers. This video, it was for hitting 1,000 views on a video. The first episode of Gaslands, featuring Rutherford versus the Warden, hit 1,000 views the day before I filmed this one, which is insane. I never expected anyone to really watch my videos, let alone 1,000 plus. That's just crazy, thank you very much. As for the next video, I'm hoping to get back to the world of Girls and Panzer, as we see Ori Girls Academy take on Saunders University in World of Tanks. I'm just waiting on one more model. And as usual, the best place to find out what's happening is to follow me on Instagram. The link is below in the description. And should I end the video going full Trekkie? Sure, let's do it. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, live long and prosper.